All right. I'm Ashley Powell. This is Greg Boughton, and this is my coachee. He is a sixth grade mathematics teacher at Marietta Sixth Grade Academy. Mr. Boughton, how long have you been teaching?
I've been teaching at Marietta City this is my 19th year, so 18 years altogether, and this will be 19.
Cool. All righty. So after the observation today, how do you feel the lesson on the open-ended questions went today?
Well, I think it went pretty well. I think a lot of the kids had some good discussion regarding the problem that they were working on, and there were a few kids I didn't really hear a lot of discussion going on with them, and so I didn't know if that was just because their communication skills are kind of lacking, or if they didn't really understand the problem, or some of them are English language learners, so maybe there was some of the language involved either in the problem or in the discussion they were having difficulty with. But overall, I think most of them participated, and they were able to talk themselves through a lot of the difficulties. And I think there were some kids who didn't understand it on one part of the discussion, and then they kind of grew to understand it through discussion. So overall, I saw a lot of thinking going on, at least, so that was good.
I could agree with that. I think I only noticed that there were maybe 3 students who didn't reach any of the indicators on our instrument tool, but overall there was some very good discussion going on. Well, based on this and the use of the open-ended questions, what goal have you set for yourself?
Well, I've noticed such a difficulty with their problem-solving skills and just being able to read like this, like an open-ended question, and be able to kind of think through a question or like talk themselves through sometimes. So my goal is kind of centered around problem solving, and just to help the kids become better problem solvers, to think through, to think what the numbers mean in a problem, and to understand what operations to use, and to work through a problem better. So they just need to improve in that.
Okay. All right. Well, based on that, how will you know if you've been successful on that?
Well, what we did today was measured on an MYP rubric, Criterion D. And so, as you know, MYP is a middle years program. And so the Criterion D is the application of mathematics to a real-world application, a real-world problem.
Okay.
And so that kind of falls in line with problem solving. And this activity that we did was measured on an MYPD rubric. And so I think that would be a good tool to use, I think, to measure if kids are improving in their problem solving skills and kind of where they are.
Okay.
So.
And I think that question was also in line with that instrument tool, because it allowed the students to be able to interpret how they would solve the problem, so they were able to offer an alternative solution to the ones that were on the assessment.
There was more than one solution to the problem, more than one strategy that they can pick, and so the assessment tool really looked at their reasoning. How do they reason through a problem like this, and are they thinking mathematically or not? And so that was a good tool for them.
Okay. Okay, so kind of talk me through what led you to this goal. What's happening in your classroom right now?
Well, I noticed the kids came in this year, and it's something I kind of notice every year, is that they have a lack of understanding of what the math operations are, what they really mean. They can kind of do the computation part, but they really have trouble struggling. They struggle with reading a problem and then being able to interpret it mathematically, and just to think through a problem logically. And so I saw that particularly this year. It just seems to be worse than normal, and I thought that's got to be something that I want them to go on to 7th grade and 8th grade and know how to do this much better. So I think that's kind of what led me to it. I just see the lack of problem-solving skills and understanding.
Okay. With the lack of understanding and problem-solving skills, what are some of the obstacles that you face? What are some particular issues that you see with their problem-solving?
Well, I see some gaps in understanding with a lot of kids. Just they have probably, I'm guessing, but they probably have gone through previous years without a true understanding of what multiplication really is, and it may be because they just kind of focused on the computational aspect of it and not the concept itself. So they have trouble being able to identify multiplication or addition or subtraction or division in a problem. So I think just the gaps in their understanding. I think that a lot of them have difficulty with computation, with their facts, just their math facts, multiplication facts, and that gets in the way a lot of their work. A lot of them will not persevere through problems because they get bogged down in the math, the computation.
Right.
So those are two large, significant gaps or significant barriers to this.
Am I alone in seeing, like in my own classroom, that students will read a problem and say, "Oh, it asks how much."
Yes.
So that means I'm supposed to do this.
Yes. And I've had kids say out loud, they said, "Well, I was taught in the past, whenever I see this word all together, I always add."
Right.
And so that's another huge barrier that I see. Just kids they were taught tricks or keywords and not really thinking through the concept, but just looking for a keyword and going on from there. So
Okay.
that's another barrier.
Okay. So based on those obstacles that we face in the classroom, what do you think that your options are to reaching the goal of increasing, their problem solving and reasoning skills?
Well, some of the things that I would like to do, or some of the things we could do, is to write more about their thought processes. And we've always done writing at our school here, and in different ways, in journal writing, and so to continue that, and maybe improve in that. I guess maybe reflect on how I did that and improve on the feedback I would give the students, but continue to focus on writing.
Okay.
There were some things I've done in the past that taught problem solving, where we'd have a word problem and they would draw a picture of it, like a diagram or a visual picture of what was going on in the problem to help them understand that. I don't know how well that worked. I don't know. Some of the problems are just, I don't know if that would necessarily fit with some of the things I want to do in a classroom. But I definitely think having activities like this that we did, where they are working in groups or pairs or even occasionally individually on an open-ended task, and they are explaining their thought processes, and it may have more than one strategy available to solve it. I think that's very valuable. Definitely a concentration on modeling when we're introducing a topic, so that they kind of have this, they need to connect this abstract concept that we're teaching to something concrete, so that it develops their understanding. And I think maybe they had missed that in the past on some things, but I want to make sure they don't miss it this year. So I want to focus on modeling and how that connects to that abstract thought and concepts. Another option would be and I've done this already this year a few times, is having something already created that they are the teacher and they are critiquing. So they're assessing another, it could be another student's work, or really it could be something that I created myself with errors in it, or different levels of communication, or different levels of understanding in a piece of work, and they are critiquing that and assessing that.
Okay.
And I think all those are pretty valuable in problem solving.
Okay. I want to go and talk about the assessing of the work or the modeling, and what do you think works best with that option?
Like what tools work best, or
Well,
what?
when you think about, say, the activity that you utilize for assessing different pieces of work that you may have created, when the students are assessing those things, what worked that would, I guess, ensure success with the students? What are some things that you may have done
To prepare them for that, or for them to actually do that?
to actually do that task?
Well, one thing I did, I thought that was very successful, was I had a problem, like an open-ended problem, and I gave it to them, and they would work a few minutes on it. I didn't give them very much time, just because that wasn't the main part of the class. The lesson then would be, I gave them 4 completed writings, or 4 completed responses to that I created myself. And one of them was kind of the A paper, one of them was a B paper, one of them was a C, one of them was a D. They all had the same answer, and they all did the same math, but they didn't explain it the same way. So the kids had to work in pairs to see if they could identify which one was the A paper, which one was the B, the C, and the D.
Okay.
And they did mostly, they got pretty well. I think there was 1 or 2 that just got the B and the C mixed up, and that was a tricky one. But it allowed a lot of good conversation with what made an effective solution and what made an ineffective solution.
Okay.
And I had one, the D paper was actually longer than a lot of the other papers, because a lot of students, some of them think, the more you write, the higher your grade's going to be.
Right.
And so it was funny, because when they assessed this paper, they all knew that was the worst one. They were like, oh, this is just too much, and this is not needed. This is all irrelevant. They didn't use that word, but they identified it like that. So there was some good conversation about that.
Okay. So you were prompting dialogue between the students, so that when they are assessing, or when they're going through their own work, they're able to say, am I being too wordy?
Right.
Or,
right.
Am I not giving enough information for Mr. Boughton to figure out, do I know this
Yes.
problem?
Yes.
Okay.
And hopefully that sunk in, and maybe some of them thought about that. Some of them did not when they, but I think it helps. Over the year, the more we do it.
Okay.
So I've only done it once, so I think that's something I would want to implement more often.
Gotcha. As I was just kind of doing some observations, there was one student, Jade, who did think about all of those steps and was able to successfully come up with an answer to the question, and to articulate
She did great.
what type of problem it was.
She did
So
fantastic.
I think that process is moving a lot of the students towards being able to answer questions like the open-ended ones you provided. So kudos to you.
That's good.
Okay. Well, so thinking about your overall goal of increasing their application of real-world problems and their problem-solving skills, how can we move towards a more defined goal? What is it that you want to see, and how do you know you're going to be successful?
Well, since we're using the MYP rubric, a rubric that's already in place, and it judges a kid, it assesses them from 0 to 8, it gives them a score. I would think, having a goal that is measured with that would be appropriate. And we could say that over time we see the kids move up that scale.